Here's a look at the top 10 teams in the state after Week 7 as ranked by Josh Wilson from FloridaHSFootball.com. Edgewater falling a bit due to a loss, but not a deep slide.
In the top 5, though, some big moves coming from American Heritage and Miami Northwestern, both moving up 5 spots to 4 and 5 respectively.
All right, so let's bring in the man himself, Josh Wilson. So Josh, I love it. A new 4 and a new 5. What is it about those two schools that you're so fired up about? Obviously, they both had big wins.
Well, they're both quality wins, Dave, and that's what the big thing was for both American Heritage Plantation and Miami Northwestern. Of course, American Heritage getting that nice win over Cardinal Gibbons, Miami Northwestern, that big win over rival Miami Central. Both quality wins. Some people are going to question me about having a 2-loss team in the top 5, but look at who they played. Look at the tough schedule they played. They deserve to be back in the top 5, and that's why both of those teams are back in there in that top 5 spots.
And looking at who they play, I know that's going to come into play with RPI rankings. Now break this down a little bit for us. What all do the RPI rankings mean, and how can teams know what they need to do to get a good RPI?
Well, let's just start with RPI. We're going to get the first RPI rankings from the Florida High School Athletic Association at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, and that is going to give us our first insight of how could the playoffs be shaping up if the season were to end today. And that's what we're going to get. And again, the 3 components of the RPI, the opponents, your win percentage, your opponent's win percentage, and your opponent's win percentage. But they're going to show all 3 of those fat numbers on the RPI. But the thing was, when you look at the RPI, you're going to want to look at the final result number, because that's going to be the number that's going to determine how you get in the playoffs. And of course, when you look at it, the higher your number, the better your chances are going to get in. And Kaylee, you know, and Dave, for both of y'all to understand this really further, to go from 1A through 4A is that the top 6 get in per region, and that's just based solely on the RPI. Go to 5A through 8A, and it's district champs first. They get seeded 1 through 4, and based upon their RPI, and then 4 wild cards per region. They get seeded based upon the RPI. So again, the higher your number your RPI is, the better your chances are going to be in the playoffs come November 2nd.
And with all of those elements in place, win percentage, opponents, it gets a little confusing. But let me ask you this. Is there a magic number of wins in your mind that you think a team should make sure they have to position themselves well?
I think the magic number, Dave, is going to be 7, because I feel like for in that case, it's going to be really, you know, significant to have at least 7 wins. Not necessarily going to be the case for every team. Some teams might be able to get in with 6 wins or even 5, and it's just depending on how tough they scheduled. I think for teams that have scheduled a little bit on the weaker side, I think getting to 7 wins is going to be necessary. Again, especially if you're looking at your opponents who have played, you know, a weaker schedule as well. So, I mean, if you're like a Trinity Christian in Jacksonville, for example, I feel like, you know, for them, you know, getting to 5 wins will actually be all right for them to get into the playoffs, whereas maybe, you know, looking at a team that has played, again, a weaker schedule, I feel like 7 wins is kind of like the magic number right there for a lot of those teams. So, again, it's a matter of who you are and what you are with your schedule. But, again, those 7 wins, I think that's where the magic line is.
Okay, Josh, I know you just talked about that magic number, but what if you don't schedule or play 10 games?
All right, Kaylee, there's some great news and there's some not so great news. The great news is that if you get to at least 8 games played, you'll be fine qualified for the playoffs per the FHA rules. But however, for some teams not playing total 10 games, it may hurt them depending on who the opponent was that they may have had drop off. And then I'm going to use an example here. Plantation and MacArthur, they were supposed to play each other when Hurricane Dorian impacted the schedule back around week 2 and 3. That really is significant right there, because Plantation right now is sitting as an undefeated team. MacArthur's had a couple of losses, but in that case, playing that game would have helped both teams, especially in the side of MacArthur, if they had really actually been able to play and win that game. That could have significantly helped them, and I don't know how much it's going to impact them when we see the RPI rankings on Tuesday. But I tell you this: it's a matter, again, who you've played and who you would have played if it's going to really deeply impact on your schedule. For some teams that you maybe have canceled, it may have been a good thing that that game got canceled just because of the way the opponent was playing this year, and, you know, maybe the way their opponents were actually playing as well. So again, it's a significant difference between, again, who the opponent was if the game got canceled. But again, You get the 8 games minimum, you'll be qualified for the FHA playoffs. It won't be no sweat. It's just a matter of where does the RPI number tell you at the end of the day, and with those 3 factors. And again, they go deeper in those 3 factors. It's 35% your win percentage, 35% your opponent's win percentage, and 30% your opponent's win percentage. And that's how the final RPI number comes out in the terms at the end. So again, it's a huge formula, but the RPI, it's going to really give us some, I think, great playoff matchups, especially when we see those RPI rankings start to come out and we get that final set come November 3rd when they drop the playoff brackets.
Well, you just mentioned it's a huge formula. Do you think the coaches will understand all of this?
I mean, I hear from the coaches all the time, Dave, that, it's like, oh, this is too complex. I don't understand it. It's the math. I hear a whole host of things. But at the end of the day, I don't even try to calculate it myself because you know what? I just like to say, you know what? Let the computer take care of things. If there's something wrong with in terms of, a game that shouldn't be in there or a game that was recorded not correctly, it'll get fixed and they go update it. And I just don't, feel like, it's in my thing. It's like, trying to guess, what it's going to be at the end of the day. I could try to take an educated guess, but at the same time, I don't want to take a guess and be totally way off either. So let the computer spit out the numbers and let's see what happens, because at the end of the day, for most teams, what you can do for your RPI is control what you do on the field on Friday nights. That is the biggest thing. If you go out there and win, it will take care of itself.
There you go. You just have to control what you can control under the lights. Josh, you're our RPI doctor. Thank you so much. I know we're going to lean on you, and we're anxiously awaiting those RPI rankings to come out.